Hey, Restorers, thanks for checking out a fresh episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today, I am excited to be joined by a couple great friends in the industry. They're both with Corelogic. You probably know both faces. They are very familiar, I am very sure. So I'm joined by Scott Severe, who is the Senior VP of Alliances and Industry Relations, which is an awesome title and just sounds like you get to make relationships with people, which is an amazing job title to have. And Brandon Burton, who's the Senior Principal of Industry Relations as well. He's also the chair of the IICRC Standards. So we're going to talk about kind of what's new at Corelogic and also what's coming up with INTRConnect in January, which you'll see behind them on their fancy backgrounds that they have. I'm not so fancy, but anyway, so I'm excited to have them both here. And I want to start actually by having Brandon and Scott introduce themselves for people who may not know them and may not be familiar with their backgrounds in the industry and their expertise and where they kind of come at this conversation from. So Brandon, I'm going to toss it over to you first and have you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background.
Awesome. Absolutely. So, so I've been in the industry for about 30 years now, somewhere in that neighborhood. Every time I think of that number, it scares me a little bit, but somewhere in that neighborhood. If I've ever had an interaction with anybody who's watching this, it's probably been as a trainer. That was the majority of my industry time, teaching ASD and WRT certification. And that's kind of brought me to where I am today and what I do today. So as for Corelogic, I really represent kind of the grassroots and the trenches as we work on software, product, and data, and really bringing the reality of restoration into the products that we serve to the market. And then also with my other hat, serving the IICRC as the standards chair, which has been an immensely rewarding process, meeting some of the most talented and dedicated and passionate minds in our industry, working on standards from everything from inspection and cleaning all the way through to restoration and remediation. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be a part of.
How long have you been doing that? How long have you been the chair and been involved with the IICRC?
Well, involved with the IICRC, probably about 20 years in total, whether as an instructor or a consensus body member on the S500, things like that. But as the chair, I think it's been 4 years now as the standards chair, I believe.
Sounds like a lot of work. Thank you for all you do in that role. Yeah. Okay, Scott, I'm going to toss it over to you and share a little bit about your background and yourself.
Okay. I too have been in the industry longer than I care to say, but we'll say between 25 and 30, roughly. But I've known Brandon for a long time, and we kind of came into the industry around the same time. My first role was with Exactware. I was employee number 42, so it was a small company at the time, and but it was 10 years in, so we got to see a lot of growth during that time period, which was awesome. Did a few entrepreneurial things. Most notably for this industry, I had Client Runner for about 8 years. We were acquired by NextGear in 2016, and we did a few other acquisitions during that time. Wore lots of hats during that period, and then in summer of 2021, we were acquired by Corelogic, and that's been really fun. It's fun to have resources when you've been on the entrepreneurial path for quite a while. So doing great things as a company, and like you said, I get to do what's fun. I love people and I love relationships, and I've been in the industry a long time, and anything you pour your heart and soul into, you start loving, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't start off thinking, hey, I want to get into restoration. I don't think a lot of people do. A lot of people don't want to be 4 o'clock in the morning standing in sewage calling people, but thank goodness we've got people that will do that and that they're good at it. So people have, the customers have a good experience.
The industry has a way of doing that to people, right? Where once you're in it, you can't imagine leaving it or being anywhere else. The people here and the industry are wonderful.
So part of what I do, I should say, I still work with the contractors a lot because I spent so much of the last 15 years there. Spent a lot of time with the carriers. So because I'm over, I guess what you'd say, Alliances speaks to our digital hub. Maybe talk about that a little bit later, but companies that we want to partner with and innovate with, I get do a lot of exciting stuff that I dreamed about early in my career, and now it's happening. So it's pretty awesome.
Now it's happening. I love it. Okay, so before we talk about INTRConnect, I want to talk a little bit about what's new at Corelogic. I know that there's always innovations happening behind the scenes, and I know that some stuff is going to be rolling out at INTRConnect. So Brandon, I'm going to start with you here and kind of talk about what is coming to fruition behind the scenes. That I know we're not going to reveal all of it today, but you have a big teaser for us. So what's coming?
So probably, not even probably, what I'm most excited about in terms of the investment that I've personally made and CoreLogic has made over the last couple of years has been squarely at kind of the heart of where my focus has been in industry, and that's the technician and specifically water mitigation. I think most will be familiar with the application MICA, right, which is that field documentation tool that has become the most used field documentation tool in the industry. But we'll be the first to admit, I don't think MICA is the most used tool in industry because everybody absolutely loves it. That's not the reason. The reason is because it does a really good job of documenting key, critical elements to a project, and stakeholders have grabbed onto that, and therefore it's become kind of the required or de facto method of reporting that upstream into the claims flow. So what I've invested a lot of time in, along with a number of folks on our engineering team and other product managers, is transforming MICA from something that does a good job at what has to be done to being something that technicians love to use. And we've been working very, very hard at that for the last 2 years. We've gotten it out into kind of an alpha test with a number of restoration contractors who've gotten a sneak peek at it. We're going through what we call a beta test right now. And that's the response we're getting. People love to use it. It makes the process easier. It makes it increases documentation fidelity without making it a process of labor in the field for the technician. And that's culminated in what we're going to announce and release at INTRConnect, which is something not called MICA, but something called Restoration Mitigate. So it's becoming an entirely new application. This isn't putting a new skin on an old product. This is bringing out an entirely new product that has been enhanced to use today's technology and today's mobile devices to make things easier, more streamlined, reduce the clicks, reduce the reading you've got to do to get to the end goal, which is good, solid documentation to justify what we've done. So I'm super excited about it. It's really been my heart and soul at CoreLogic for the last couple of years.
And how have you been able to tie that into your expertise and experience with the IICRC standards and all of that, and working all that together?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michelle. So that's really the primary reason that I got so invested in it. The reason I've dedicated a lot of time into the IICRC and standards, because that's where my passion lies personally. I think at the end of the day, what requires, the greatest effort in just truth and clarity is the project itself. It's the data, right? We have all kinds of stakeholders around that data, the carriers, the TPAs, the contractors, the homeowners, the independent adjusters, whatever they are. But at the end of the day, what we all care about is truth and integrity in the data, right? And that's what standards are really there to represent, is to help us ensure that we're getting truth and integrity in the data. So I took that and that kind of mentality and that thinking process into what we've done with what's going to be formally known as MICA and what's going to become Restoration Mitigate, to ensure that the application represents the standard of care. And it helps us all center around that truth, right? Because at the end of the day, if that's true and that's sound and that's right, everything else falls into place. And that's exactly what Mitigate's going to do. It's going to bring the standard of care even further into the limelight to ensure that that's what our conversations are centered around.
Perfect. And what are you, I have to ask this question, what are you telling contractors? I know that it's in like alpha and testing phase, but every time there's new software that comes out, and Scott will totally understand this as well, I'm sure people are like, oh, we have to adopt another software. We have to train another software. What if my team doesn't want to? How do I get them to adopt it? So what are you kind of telling contractors who are in this testing phase, or what do you plan to tell them when it's time to, hey, we're making the change. Here comes Restoration Mitigate. What are you telling them?
So a couple of things. I don't want to let all the cats out of the bag for what's coming at INTRConnect, but here's my personal commitment to those that are actually going to be using the app. You're the stakeholder group that I'm most familiar with, right? That's what I've spent my time in training and in applied structural drying and things like that. So that's the perspective I've had the most exposure to, and that's what I've thought about through this process. And what I've found, and even through the alpha testing, is that when I give a technician this application, even without putting them through significant training or whatever, they're 100% up, operational, and independent in the application in less than a day. Which for software is pretty challenging to accomplish that feat. To have something be simple enough, intuitive enough, that all I really need to do is give it to you and say, you've used Facebook before, right? you've used Instagram before, right? Well, think about that, grab this app and just see where you go. And by incorporating those types of familiarities and what folks are in and out of, constantly, with today's mobile technology, it makes things a lot easier to uptake. So the types of gestures in the application, the types of features, the way it's organized, you're going to find that the uptake, the training, the ability to get your staff up and running on it, it's going to be much simpler than what you're used to.
I've seen it, Michelle, and it's beautiful. It's simple and easy, and it passes the spouse test. So I'm sure I got this from somebody a long time ago, but I've been using it forever. I believe software should be able to pass the spouse test. If you hand it to your spouse and they say, "What is this?" to say, "Well, look at it. Start playing with it and see what you think." Yeah, much better user experience on top of the really solid structure that it had before. So pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm not going to say anything else, Brandon, I promise.
Don't let too much out of the bag. You have to come to INTRConnect to find out more. Okay, so Scott, perfect segue. I want you to talk a little bit about the Contractor Advisory Council. I believe that that's something maybe a little bit newer. Talk a little bit about that and what that encompasses.
Yeah, so because I've been in the industry for a long time, Garrett's been in the industry for a long time. Garrett Gray, our president of our Protect division, founder and owner of NextGear, and other executives. We talked a lot about how do we keep ourselves connected. Distance to front as you get into a bigger company can be a hurdle. Are you hearing from the people? And we've got different avenues, but we wanted to make sure that the independent contractor had an avenue, and not just the large independent contractors, but the everyday independent contractor. And so we spun up a council, went after some of the best, and we'll continue to, that will evolve over time and change in, change out. But really had a fun and exciting first year. We did some cool things that we tried to work it around shows so they wouldn't have to travel if they weren't already traveling. We did some Zoom meetings, but man, a lot of engagement, a lot of great feedback. We were able to share with them some of the stuff that's on the tool bench that we can't share in a conversation like this or until it's ready to launch. But really, really powerful and a fun group to be around, and it's been really effective. I've had a lot of people throughout the company say, "Hey, that's been really helpful. Thank you." So,
what kind of feedback are those contractors giving? And you don't have to name the contractors who are on the council, but talk about, I know some who are, so I guess just kind of paint the picture of what they're the everyday restorers, right? Like these are restorers and contractors that pretty much everybody listening to this can relate to, right?
Yeah, in fact, we tried to do multiple, a lot of diversity in personality types, diversity in people, diversity in company types, so small companies, larger companies. The feedback they're giving, it ranges from their pet things that they want to talk about when they first get there, and you kind of get those out of the way, to we shared with them, here's our product roadmap. We'd like to focus on some of these things. And it was very structured and organized in how we would get their feedback. And we had different elements of the company come in and present. Things as simple as here's a marketing ad that we did that they roasted and gave us some really good feedback to us telling them some things, and they go, "Wow, it sounds like you're listening." Things we talked about earlier in the year are already showing up, and this is fantastic. So without getting into specifics, yeah, they were able to look at some of our new products and look at the outgoing Mika product and the new product, and yeah, it's just really valuable feedback. So product marketing, how we're coming across in the industry, is it what we're trying to say? Because if it's what you're trying to say, fine, but if that's not what you're trying to say, then maybe say it a little bit differently. And these are people that run companies, so they're type A. They're not shy. They give us sometimes unvarnished raw feedback, which is good. But they never complain. There's a difference between feedback and complaining, and I love feedback.
It's so smart to get feedback, especially in the software space. There's so much going on and things change so quickly. So I'm sure contractors like knowing that they're being heard and you're taking that into consideration. Okay, talk about the Digital Hub Alliance as well. You also mentioned that in kind of the intro section. So what is the Digital Hub Alliance?
So we're really focused on the whole ecosystem with an end goal of helping the policyholder have a great experience. And so we can't do everything by ourselves. Building tomorrow together is our theme for the conference this year. Better together has been a theme that we've used a lot. So I get to talk to different vendors that are, maybe hyper focused on one piece or one element of the industry, and they're really good at it. And our customers say, hey, how do we get integrated with that? So this year we did focus on a lot of interoperability. We did some surveys, and the vast amount of information or feedback that we got back was, hey, let's make sure all your products talk together, because we've had a few acquisitions in the last 2 years. And so, that was a big thing to wrap our structure around, but we've done that pretty well. We'll continue to do that. With Claims Connect, mobile claims, we've got a pretty nice API, which allows vendors to write to our software as opposed to us hitting the development roadmap. When you hit the development roadmap, you're not getting in for 12 to 18 months to even start. And then it's however long it takes to develop, and you got to justify resources. If we have an API, the developers on the other side, from the company that wants to integrate, they can decide when they want to do that. And so it makes it a lot easier. We've got some solid APIs out there, underwriting, claims, and then our contractor facing tools a little bit behind there, because most of those integrations in the past have been custom. So we're building those APIs, making that easier and easier. But we have a whole team dedicated to figuring out how we can integrate with other companies that are going to help move the ecosystem forward, not just our company. That's one of our probably 3 prongs to innovation.
Okay, so let's talk about INTRConnect. I want to know from both of you what your take is on, you both have been to many industry events. I mean, if you're both in the industry almost pushing 30 years, I mean, I've been to a lot of industry events and I've only been around since 2015. So I've not been in the industry that long. I've been around a while, but anyway, I digress. I am curious what makes INTRConnect different from both of your standpoints. So Scott, go ahead and go first, and then I'm going to toss it over to Brandon. But what makes INTRConnect different?
So many things. First of all, the energy and the vibe are amazing. I got so much feedback, and that was a fun conference, but we did business there. It was awesome. There's a lot of connections. So my favorite thing about the conference is the people. But I get to see that a lot of places. But we've really designed it so that you can have a lot of interactions, collisions, if you will, so that you can have epiphanies. The whole key is when you go home or back to your shop, you want to have a couple of nuggets, a couple of epiphanies that literally change your business. Won't go into the story, but I doubled growth one year just on a couple of epiphanies that I had with some fellow entrepreneurs. And they can be extremely valuable. One of the things that sets us apart, though, is we have great keynote speakers, we have great breakouts, but we have role-based tracks. And so, typically you have the owners of a restoration company, key executives go and they do their thing. Sometimes they plan around a vacation around it. This is more of it's at the start of the year on purpose. It's bring your whole team. We've got role-based tracks. And that time away from the office, even though it's hard to rip people away, it's so valuable because you never get to do it. There's never a good time to do it. But you bring all these, bring your whole team, and they all have epiphanies. And then you go to put your business plan together, and you've got solid data and solid information to take back. And probably the biggest thing, though, is you get to meet the people behind the teams that typically aren't at the shows, because it costs a lot of money to bring people to the shows. We bring, I don't know what percentage, a big percentage of our companies there. So you get to talk to product, you get to talk to operations, you get to talk to sales, senior leadership teams, executive leaderships, and we're all accessible. We're all at the events, we're in the hallways, and I'm so tired at the end of that show because we have so many conversations. It's just literally walking around having conversations, but it's electric. It's awesome.
I got to meet a lot of people last year that I had emailed with, but never met in person. And yes, there's so much of the team there. It's like, oh my gosh, we've emailed so many times. I'm happy to finally meet you.
I don't get too far off track, but when you meet people that you haven't met, but you've been talking to for 2 years, are you ever shocked about how tall or short they are or anything else? I'm usually like, oh, you're tall. It's shocking.
Everyone's tall to me, so
I'm gonna get to meet them. I wasn't gonna go there.
So true. Okay, Brandon, what about you? What's your favorite part of INTRConnect?
Well, the first thing is just I second everything that Scott said. Because absolutely, he's hitting on many of the points. One of the things that when I think about INTRConnect, that really makes it stand out for me is that you get both the vertical and the lateral of our industry represented so well at this event. And what I mean by that is the vertical is that you're getting every role in a restoration company, first of all, that is present. You have owners and general managers, you have project managers, division leads, technicians. They're all there in the conversations that are being had, and all of the presentations that are being made are intended to hit all of those levels in the organization. And most of the shows that I've been to, they're not really intended that way. They're intended to hit a specific audience within that restoration community, which rings a little hollow if you're not hitting the whole business, right? If you don't hit the whole business, it's really hard to do, as Scott said, to bring something back where you can impact change if that change is not designed for the totality of the vertical in that business. Then on the other side of it, you've got the lateral of industry also represented, because every stakeholder group that is a part of the restoration community is there. It's not just the restorer specifically, the practitioner that's represented at the show. It's the other stakeholders that participate at a professional level. So everything from underwriting to claims on the insurance side to those that participate in the third party programs, to the contractors that are performing the work, all of that is represented. And again, the message is intended to hit that entire lateral on the industry. And again, it's hard to bring back something to impact change in industry if you're not hitting that entire spectrum, right? If you have something that's really super impactful for a contractor, but it's not impactful for the full stakeholder group, it's hard to enact industry change with that particular piece of information, no matter how earth-shattering it is. But if it impacts that entire lateral across industry, then it becomes an earth mover, right? It becomes a mountain mover at that point. And that's what I see INTRConnect as. It's an opportunity to see mountains begin moving because of how well we've represented the lateral and the vertical in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great points. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the business aspect of INTRConnect and the way the tracks work and the keynotes and the sessions and learn and grow. But Scott, what about the fun stuff? There's got to be fun stuff too. So what about the fun stuff at INTRConnect?
How great is Austin? I love that we're going to Austin. I've been there a few times. Actually, went on a little mini vacation during COVID to Austin and San Antonio, and it was beautiful and fun. So a lot of energy in that city, a lot of things right there around the hotel that we can go do. We've got some fun stuff planned. There's, again, I said before, we designed it to make sure that we're having lots of conversation collisions, lots of interaction. Even your team members that come will have conversations with fellow team members. Some of the best learnings I've had in my career have been with a counterpart who's in another company. And I'm like, man, I'm facing this thing. And usually I'll work out the problem myself, but just sounding it out with them and hearing their feedback, you're like, oh, okay, got it. And so that part's great, but a lot of fun stuff. We've designed in receptions, we designed in break time, we designed in purposeful pieces of the event that allow you to interact with other people. And I would caution not to go to your room and be on the phone or in meetings. If you're coming, you've invested a lot of time and money, be there, participate, partake, and engage, and you will have a great time. There's some fun stuff coming.
Talk a little bit about the overall kind of vibe of the show, because this isn't kind of the more, I don't know, like, how am I going to say this without it? Okay. It's not like formal stuffy. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be engaging and meant to help people connect and network. So talk a little bit about what you feel the vibe is of the show to give people a taste of it.
I think it's got a new cutting edge vibe. So it's a fun yet professional vibe. And it really mirrors what we're doing as a country and as a society. Ever since 2008, when the iPhone came out, tons of pictures and raw footage. After COVID, you've got dogs, cats, children in the meeting rooms with us, and it's okay. And we deal with it. You don't have to have this professional footage. You can have it shot on an iPhone and it's okay. We're trying to not take ourselves so seriously, but get serious work done. And that makes it fun because people let their guard down. And when when you let your guard down, when the guard goes down, resistance goes down, learning goes up. And we're really focused on learning and epiphanies. And so the vibe is meant intentionally to be fun, not take us so seriously, but get serious work done. So very professional. So the way we dress, like I'm not wearing the collared button-down shirt and a tie. Early in my career, anytime we went to the Northeast, we had to wear suits and ties because that's how it was done. And so I think we're evolving as the community evolves, and we're trying to stay on that leading edge because that's where we like to live.
Yes, perfect. Brandon, anything else you want to add? I have another question for you, Brandon, as well, but I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add about INTRConnect before I stray away.
INTRConnect. I think Scott hit the nail right on the head. So
perfect. Okay. Well, I cannot have you on a podcast without asking for an update on the IICRC standards and what's new, because you are the perfect person to talk about it. So let's stray away from Corelogic for a minute and share what's new and what's up.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. I think what's most exciting right now for what's happening in standards is that we're on the verge of the industry finally having a fire standard. I don't think there's anything I could share that would be more earth-shattering than that. And it's close. It's the S700 is the standard that will become the S500, if you will, of fire. And that is likely to publish sometime in the first quarter of 2024. They're ANSI standards, and they go through this process, and there's these review periods, et cetera. So to really simplify things, it's in its final review period. That review period should wrap up here in the month of December. Then you got to go through all the publication steps. So I would anticipate January, February, our industry is going to have a fire standard. I just want to give a huge shout out to the consensus body that has led that process. The folks that have volunteered there to dedicate their time have committed years of painstaking arguments and debates and friendly conversation, if you will, to try to bring to a central point what is standard of care for fire restoration. And they've done a wonderful job. I've read through the document multiple times myself, and I'm very excited that it's coming out to the market. Aside from that, there are several other, standard related newsworthy items that are happening. The industry does now also have an HVAC assessment standard related to inspection to fire and water and mold events, which is phenomenal. That consensus body was able to bring that to publication here this year. And there are several other standards that are in the fray, that are in the mix. Trauma and crime scene cleanup, and illicit drug cleanup. Even wildfire restoration is another standard that's in the process that sometime next year we'll have available, hopefully before the summer hits. So a lot happening. In the last 4 years that I've been a part of standards, to see this many standards either in development or in review or become published in this period of time is really unprecedented. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if we're going to have 20 published standards here sometime in the very, very near future, which is amazing for the IICRC. When you think back to historically, we were really founded on just a few of those. So it's great to see that expansion of professional support and guidance available to our industry.
That is really exciting.
Not to push it back to the conference, INTRConnect 2024, but you will have an opportunity to earn continuing education credits there. We'll have a dash fundamentals training, a very in-depth, lengthy training that's free. We're not charging for that. And then there's the IICRC credits that Brandon lined up for us. So
yeah, in fact, you can earn enough credits at INTRConnect to satisfy your entire year's continuing education credit requirement.
That alone is a big deal and a big selling point. I know people are constantly scraping for those CECs, and gosh, to knock them out at the beginning of the year even would be that's a big deal. And congrats on all the work on the fire standard. I know there's been a lot of chatter in the industry, and I know the industry is very excited about that and to have that resource really soon. So I look forward to being able to share more when that does come out and is finalized.
Yeah, just a quick note on that, by the way, Michelle, that I think is really interesting and newsworthy is that standard received more public comments from the industry than any standard that has been written by IICRC or revised by IICRC. That tells me how invested the industry is in having a standard in that subject area. It set a record by far. It doubled the number of comments that we had received from public. So
wow,
that was good news. Great interest.
That's awesome.
Every time I talk to Brandon, I'm going to use that.
Yes. Okay. Before we wrap it up, anybody who wants to register, there's QR codes behind Brandon and Scott. But if you're listening, you can go to INTRConnect. It's INTR connect.corelogic.com. You can also go to the CNR website. There's other links. You can look at our events calendar. You can look at the ads. There's no way that you look on Facebook, look on LinkedIn. If you've missed it, I don't know how. There are links everywhere to get registered. The event itself is January 21st through 24th in Austin, which is going to be amazing. I am super excited. I have multiple people from my team who are coming. We're looking forward to being a part of it as well. Okay, anything that you two want to share before we wrap it up?
I'll just say, whenever I look for an industry event, because I'm on a call or something, I'm like, what were the dates on that? I go to CNR Magazine. Because if you Google, you get links that are from 3 years ago sometimes, or it's not always, but yours are always spot on. So I go there. So a little
Love
shout
it.
out.
Thank you. It's actually like one of our busiest landing pages on the website. So thanks.
And I just want to finish with a plug for Mitigate. Look to the days immediately following INTRConnect, and look to the app stores, et cetera, and get Mitigate installed, and start moving over to Mitigate. It's going to be well worth the time that you spend getting your crews moved, and it's not going to take you nearly as long as you think, but the reward is going to be well worth it.
Perfect. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you in a couple months in Austin. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
Right,
Michelle. Thanks, Brandon.
For more Restoration Today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.